You're a mechanic. My daughter deserves a billionaire." Richard Sterling's voice echoed through the packed ballroom. Every conversation stopped. Every face turned toward the young man standing across from him. Daniel Hayes. His hands were clean now, but there was still something about him that made it obvious he wasn't accustomed to rooms like this. His dark suit was simple compared to the designer tuxedos surrounding him. A few guests exchanged amused looks. Someone laughed. Richard stepped closer. "You heard me. Amelia has spent her entire life surrounded by people who can give her the future she deserves." Daniel said nothing. He simply looked across the room at Amelia. Her eyes were already filled with hurt. "Dad." Richard raised a hand. "No, this ends tonight." Daniel's jaw tightened. But he still didn't defend himself. He simply lowered his eyes, turned around and walked away. What Richard didn't know was that the man he just humiliated was worth more than his entire empire. And what Amelia didn't know was that Daniel had been hiding the truth from her long before her father ever met him. Before we continue, subscribe to Velvet Whisk Stories and join our growing family of story lovers. And I want to know, what country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, because what happened next changed everything. 3 weeks earlier, the first time Amelia Sterling met Daniel Hayes, she was having the worst morning of her life. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her assistant had already called twice. Her father had sent 3 messages demanding that she attend a business luncheon she had absolutely no interest in. And now, as if the universe had decided she hadn't suffered enough, her car had stopped dead in the middle of a quiet road. Amelia stared at the dashboard. "You have got to be kidding me." She tried starting the engine again. Nothing. She leaned back against the driver's seat and closed her eyes. Perfect. A few minutes later, she stepped out of the car and called roadside assistance. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. No one came. Eventually, she noticed a small auto repair shop across the street. It was nothing like the places she was accustomed to. The building was old. The sign was faded. There were 2 dusty cars parked outside, and an open garage where a man in dark work clothes was bent over the hood of a vehicle. Amelia hesitated. Then she grabbed her handbag. "Fine." She crossed the street. "Excuse me." The mechanic didn't answer. She tried again. "Hello." Still nothing. Amelia frowned. She walked closer. "Excuse me." The man finally looked up. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. Daniel was younger than she expected. Late 20s. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Dark hair slightly messy from working beneath the hood. His eyes were calm, almost annoyingly calm. He wiped his hands with a cloth. "Yeah." Amelia pointed toward the road. "My car won't start." Daniel glanced at the luxury vehicle sitting across the street. Then back at her. "You tried the ignition." She stared at him. "Obviously." "Battery." "I don't know." "Fuel." Amelia's expression changed. "Of course there's fuel." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's what everyone says right before I find an empty tank." She stared at him for 2 seconds. Then unexpectedly she laughed. It was the first genuine laugh she'd had all morning. Daniel smiled slightly. "Come on." He grabbed his tools and followed her outside. Within minutes, he had the hood open. Amelia stood nearby, watching him work. "You're not going to ask what happened." Daniel didn't look up. "You already told me." "My car stopped." "Exactly." She folded her arms. "Most people ask more questions. Most people aren't trying to fix your car. That answer made her smile again. There was something strangely refreshing about him. He didn't seem impressed by her. He didn't stare at her expensive clothes. He didn't recognize the name Sterling. Or at least, if he did, he didn't care. After several minutes, Daniel straightened. "I know what's wrong." Amelia looked relieved. "How much?" "Nothing." She blinked. "What?" "I haven't fixed it yet." She laughed. Daniel opened the driver's door. "Give me 10 minutes." He was right. 10 minutes later, the engine came alive. Amelia stared at him. "You fixed it." "That is generally the objective." She shook her head. "Okay, how much do I owe you?" Daniel wiped his hands. "Nothing." "Why?" "Because it was a loose connection. And it took me 10 minutes." She reached into her handbag. Daniel immediately shook his head. "No." She stopped. "I didn't even say anything. You were about to give me money." "Of course I was." "I don't want it." Amelia stared at him. Nobody ever refused her money. Not mechanics. Not restaurants. Not people she barely knew. She studied him carefully. "What's your name?" "Daniel." "Daniel what?" He paused for half a second. "Daniel Hayes." "I'm Amelia." "I know." She froze. "You know me." Daniel looked at her. For the first time, something changed in his expression. Just for a moment. Then it disappeared. "Your name was on the paperwork in the car." Amelia glanced toward the vehicle. "Right. Of course." She smiled. "Good save." Daniel gave a quiet laugh. But he didn't explain. And Amelia didn't notice the way his eyes followed her as she walked back toward her car. She certainly didn't notice that Daniel had recognized her before she'd even stepped out of the vehicle. He knew exactly who Amelia Sterling was. Everyone in his world knew the Sterling name. But Daniel had no intention of telling her about his world. Not yet. Over the next few days, Amelia found herself thinking about him, which annoyed her. She had met thousands of people. Men with better clothes, better cars, better connections. Yet she couldn't stop thinking about the mechanic who had refused her money. So 3 days later, she drove back to the garage. Daniel looked up when he saw her. "Car trouble again?" "No." "Then why are you here?" Amelia smiled. "I wanted coffee." Daniel looked around the garage. "We don't sell coffee." "I know." "So?" She shrugged. "I brought 2. She held up 2 cups. Daniel stared at them. Then at her. "You came all the way here to bring me coffee." "Maybe." "Why?" Amelia smiled. "I don't know." For the first time, Daniel looked genuinely caught off guard. He took the cup. "Thank you." And that simple moment became the beginning of something neither of them expected. Over the next 2 weeks, Amelia kept finding reasons to visit the garage. Sometimes she brought coffee. Sometimes lunch. Once she claimed her car was making a strange noise. Daniel listened for less than 10 seconds. "There is no strange noise." Amelia sighed. "I know." He looked at her. "You came here because you wanted to see me." She smiled. "Maybe." Daniel shook his head. "You're trouble. And you're boring." "I fix cars." "Exactly." They laughed. But beneath the teasing, something deeper was growing. Daniel liked the woman Amelia was when nobody was watching. Without her father's security guards. Without expensive parties. without people calling her Miss Sterling. And Amelia liked Daniel because he never treated her like a billionaire's daughter. Around him, she could simply be Amelia. One evening, Daniel took her to a tiny, family-owned restaurant. Amelia looked around. "You're serious?" "What?" "My father spends more than this on bottled water." Daniel smiled. "You do like it." She looked at him, then at the simple table. The warm lights, the ordinary people laughing around them. "No." She smiled. "I love it." Daniel watched her for a moment, and something in his expression softened. "You know," Amelia said, "you're very strange. I've been told you never talk about your family." Daniel's smile faded slightly. "There's not much to talk about." "That sounds like a lie." "It is." She studied him. "Are they alive?" "Yes." "Do they live here?" "No." "Where?" Daniel looked down at his glass. "Everywhere." Amelia laughed. "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight." She let it go, but the question stayed in her mind. Because Daniel wasn't simply private. He was hiding something, and Amelia was beginning to realize it. Meanwhile, across the city, Richard Sterling was becoming increasingly concerned. His daughter had changed. She was smiling more, leaving the house without her usual security, and spending an unusual amount of time away from the family business. One evening, Richard walked into Amelia's room without knocking. "You've been avoiding me." Amelia looked up from her phone. "I've been busy." "With what?" "Life." Richard frowned. "Who is he?" Amelia's fingers stopped moving. "Who?" "The man you're seeing." Silence. Richard stepped closer. "Amelia, don't lie to me." She slowly put her phone down. "His name is Daniel." "What does he do?" Amelia hesitated. "He's a mechanic." Richard stared at her, then laughed. Not because it was funny, because he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. "A mechanic?" "Yes." "You're dating a mechanic?" "Dad?" "No." His expression hardened. "Absolutely not." Amelia stood. "You don't even know him." "I know enough." "You don't." "I know that my daughter has spent her entire life preparing for a certain kind of future." Amelia's eyes narrowed. "I never agreed to that future." Richard ignored her. "There are people in this city who would give anything to be part of this family." "I don't care." "You should." "No." Her voice cracked with emotion. "I care about whether someone is kind to me, whether they respect me, whether I can actually be myself around them." Richard stared at her. "And you think a mechanic can give you that?" Amelia answered without hesitation. "Yes." Richard's face hardened. "Then I'll meet him." The next afternoon, Daniel was underneath a customer's car when a black luxury SUV pulled into the garage. He slid out from underneath the vehicle. 2 security guards stepped out first. Then Richard Sterling. Daniel immediately recognized him. Richard looked around the garage with obvious disgust. "So you're Daniel?" Daniel stood. "Yes." Richard looked him up and down. "You're the mechanic." Daniel nodded. Richard smiled coldly. "I see." Daniel wiped his hands. "Can I help you with something?" Richard stepped closer. "Yes." He lowered his voice. "Stay away from my daughter." Daniel's expression didn't change, but his eyes did. And for the first time, Richard realized something strange about the young man standing in front of him. Daniel wasn't intimidated, not even slightly. Richard noticed it, and he didn't like it. "You may think Amelia is interested in you," Richard said, "but this isn't a game." Daniel remained silent. "She belongs to a world you know nothing about." Daniel looked directly into his eyes. "I know." Richard smiled. "Good." He turned to leave, then stopped. "And Daniel." Daniel waited. "Don't mistake my daughter's kindness for permission to become part of this family." Richard walked away. Daniel watched the SUV disappear. Then he looked down at his hands. For several seconds, he said nothing. His phone suddenly rang. Daniel answered. "Hello." A man's voice came through. "Mr. Hayes, the board meeting has been moved to tomorrow morning." Daniel glanced toward the road where Richard's SUV had disappeared. "Cancel it." "Sir?" "I said cancel it. Your father specifically asked." Daniel's voice became colder. "I'll handle my father." He ended the call. Then he looked toward the entrance of the garage. Amelia was standing there. She had heard everything. Daniel's face changed. "Amelia." She looked confused. "Who was that?" Daniel said nothing. Her eyes narrowed. "You said your family wasn't involved in business." "I said I didn't want to talk about them." "That isn't what I asked." Daniel stepped toward her. "Amelia." She stopped him. "No." Her expression softened, but the suspicion remained. "You're hiding something from me." Daniel looked at her. And for the first time since they met, he didn't have an answer. Because Amelia had no idea that the man she thought was hiding a small family secret was actually hiding an empire. And Daniel had no idea that his carefully protected secret was about to collide with the one person he was most afraid of losing. If you're already getting emotionally invested in Amelia and Daniel's story, stay with us, because the truth behind Daniel's identity is about to change everything. And if you're enjoying the story, subscribe to Velvet Whisk Stories and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know how far this story has reached. Now let's get back to the story. Amelia stood at the entrance of the garage, staring at Daniel. "You're hiding something from me." Daniel didn't answer. The silence between them suddenly felt heavier than it should have. A few seconds earlier, she had been smiling. Now she wasn't sure what to believe. "Who was that on the phone?" she asked again. Daniel looked away. "Someone from my family." "Your family?" "Yes. You told me they weren't involved in business." "I said I didn't want to talk about them." "That isn't the same thing." Daniel sighed. "Amelia, please." She stepped closer. "Please what?" He looked at her. "Trust me." Her expression softened for a moment. Then she shook her head. "I want to, but you're making it difficult." Daniel reached for her hand. She let him take it. "I'll tell you everything," he said. "When?" Daniel hesitated. "Soon." Amelia gave him a disappointed smile. "That's what people say when they don't plan on telling you anything." She pulled her hand away. Then she walked out. Daniel watched her leave. He wanted to stop her. He wanted to tell her everything. His real name. His family. The company. The fortune. Everything. But he couldn't. Not yet. Because he had spent years running from exactly the kind of life that was now chasing him. And Amelia was the first person he'd ever wanted to protect from it. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the garage before sunrise. He barely slept. His phone had been ringing all night. Board members, executives, his father's assistant, even his father himself. Daniel ignored every call. Then, at exactly 8 o'clock, a black sedan stopped outside the garage. An older man stepped out. He wore an expensive suit and carried a leather folder. Daniel recognized him immediately. "Mr. Hayes." Daniel frowned. "I told you not to come here." The man lowered his voice. "Your father is furious. I don't care. He wants you back at headquarters." "No. He says if you continue refusing, he'll announce your return to the board without your permission." Daniel's expression hardened. "Let him try." The man looked toward the garage. "Does the girl know?" Daniel became completely still. "Don't mention her." "I wasn't going to." "Good." The man nodded. "Then you need to decide quickly." He handed Daniel the folder. Daniel didn't open it. "What is this?" "The merger documents." Daniel looked at the folder. "Take them back." "Sir?" "I said take them back." The man hesitated. Then he left. Daniel watched the car disappear. But he didn't notice Amelia standing across the street. She had seen the entire exchange. And now her doubts were growing. That evening, Amelia sat across from her father at dinner. Richard was unusually quiet. She knew something was wrong. "What did you do?" Richard looked up. "Excuse me. You've been investigating Daniel." Richard placed his fork down. "I've been protecting you. I didn't ask you to. I spoke to him." Amelia's heart sank. "You went to his garage?" "Yes." "What did you say?" "The truth." "And what exactly is the truth?" Richard leaned back. "That he's not good enough for you." Amelia stood. "You don't get to decide that." Richard's voice hardened. "I am your father. And I'm an adult." Silence. Richard stared at her. Then he said quietly, "You're making a mistake." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "Maybe." She walked away. But Richard wasn't finished. "Amelia." She stopped. "You'll thank me one day." She turned around. "No, Dad." Her voice trembled. "I'll forgive you one day." Then she walked out. The following afternoon, Amelia found Daniel waiting outside her apartment. He was holding 2 coffees. She stared at him. "You remembered." Daniel smiled. "Vanilla latte." She took it. "I'm still angry with you." "I know. You're still hiding something." "I know." "Then why are you here?" Daniel looked at her. "Because I don't want you to leave." Her anger weakened. "Daniel, I've never been good at explaining myself. That much is obvious." He smiled. She tried not to. It didn't work. Daniel stepped closer. "My family is complicated." "How complicated?" "Very." "Are they rich?" Daniel paused. Amelia noticed. "You hesitated." "I didn't want to lie." "So they are." Daniel nodded. "Yes." "How rich?" He looked away. "Rich enough." Amelia stared at him. "That's not an answer." "It'll have to be for now." She sighed. "I hate secrets." "I know. And I hate being lied to." "I haven't lied to you." She looked into his eyes. "Then tell me who you are." Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. And that silence hurt her more than any lie could have. She stepped back. "I need time." Daniel nodded. I'll give you time. For the first time, Daniel understood that keeping Amelia safe from his world might cost him Amelia herself. And that frightened him more than anything his father could do. 2 days later, Amelia attended a charity gala with her parents. She didn't want to go, but Richard insisted. This is important. Amelia walked into the ballroom in an elegant black gown. Almost immediately, she noticed Ethan Blake, Richard's business partner's son. He approached with a smile. Amelia, Ethan, you look beautiful. Thank you. He offered his arm. She didn't take it. Richard watched from across the room. Ethan lowered his voice. I heard you've been spending time with someone. Amelia's expression changed. Who told you? Your father. She looked toward Richard. He's concerned. Amelia laughed bitterly. Of course he is. Ethan smiled. Maybe he's right. About what? About you needing someone who understands your world. Amelia looked directly at him. You mean someone rich? Ethan's smile disappeared for a moment. I mean someone who can protect you. I don't need protection. You might. Before Amelia could answer, Richard approached. Ethan. Richard placed a hand on his shoulder. Why don't you two spend some time together? Amelia stared at her father. I'm leaving. Richard caught her arm. Amelia. She pulled away. Stop trying to choose my life for me. Then she walked away. But Ethan watched her go. His expression changed. He wasn't used to rejection. And he certainly wasn't willing to lose to a mechanic. That night, Ethan made a phone call. I need you to investigate someone. A voice answered. Who? Daniel Hayes. There was a pause. Any relation to the Hayes family? Ethan frowned. What Hayes family? That's the problem. 3 days later, Daniel was closing the garage when Ethan walked in. Daniel looked up. You're lost. Ethan smiled. I don't think so. Daniel put down his tools. What do you want? To talk. About. Amelia. Daniel's expression hardened. She isn't interested in you. Ethan laughed. You really believe this is about love? Daniel stepped closer. What does that mean? Ethan's smile disappeared. You have no idea what you're playing with. Daniel stared at him. You're right about one thing. What? You don't know me. Ethan held his gaze. Maybe I know more than you think. Daniel's expression changed. Ethan noticed. That was enough. He turned toward the door. See you around, Daniel. Daniel watched him leave. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The next morning, Amelia received an anonymous message. There was no name, just a photograph. It showed Daniel stepping out of the black sedan from the day he'd been visited at the garage. Underneath it was one sentence. You don't know who you're dating. Amelia's heart began racing. She stared at the photograph. Then another message arrived. This time, it contained a photograph of Daniel entering a massive glass building in the center of the city. The building was familiar. She had seen its logo on television. Hayes Global Holdings. Amelia's breathing changed. No. She searched Daniel's name. Nothing obvious appeared. She searched again. Still nothing. Then she noticed something. The company's official website had a photograph of its mysterious chairman. The man's face was partially hidden in the image. But his eyes, they looked exactly like Daniel. Amelia's phone slipped from her hand. That evening, she drove straight to the garage. Daniel was inside. He smiled when he saw her. "Amelia." She didn't smile back. "Are you the owner of Hayes Global Holdings?" Daniel froze. The question hung between them. "Where did you hear that?" "So it's true." "Amelia, answer me." Daniel took a breath. "Yes." Her eyes filled with tears. "How long were you going to let me believe you were just a mechanic? I never said I was poor. You let me think it. I wanted you to know me first." She laughed through her tears. "You don't get to decide what I deserve to know." "I was afraid." "Of what?" "That you'd see the money before you saw me." Amelia shook her head. "You should have trusted me." "I was trying to." "No." She stepped back. "You were testing me." "That's not what I was doing." "It feels exactly like that." Daniel moved toward her. "Amelia, please." She raised her hand. "Don't." He stopped. Her voice became quieter. "I told you I hated secrets." "I know. And you looked me in the eyes every day knowing you were hiding a fortune. I wanted to tell you. But you didn't." Silence. Amelia wiped away a tear. "I don't know who you are anymore." She turned and walked away. Daniel didn't follow, because he knew there was nothing he could say that would make the truth hurt less. That night, Amelia sat alone in her bedroom. She looked at the photographs again. The man she'd fallen for wasn't simply wealthy. He was powerful, influential, untouchable, and somehow he had chosen to spend his days repairing cars. She couldn't understand why, but there was something else bothering her. If Daniel really owned Hayes Global Holdings, why had he been hiding from everyone? And why was his family so desperate to bring him back? Across the city, Daniel stood inside a luxurious penthouse overlooking the skyline. The same man who had seen him at the garage earlier stood beside him. "You've run long enough." Daniel stared through the window. "I know. Your father wants you at the board meeting tomorrow." Daniel said nothing. "And there is another problem." Daniel turned. "What?" "The Sterling family is involved in tomorrow's negotiations." His expression changed. "Amelia's father?" "Yes." Daniel's jaw tightened. The man continued. "And your father has already decided what he's going to do." "What?" "He intends to announce you publicly as the next chairman of Hayes Global Holdings." Daniel looked toward the city. His secret was over. But he wasn't worried about the business. He was worried about Amelia. The next morning, Richard arrived at Sterling headquarters expecting the biggest business announcement of his career. A merger with Hayes Global Holdings could transform his company. He walked into the boardroom confidently. Then the doors closed behind him. A senior executive stood at the front. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming." Richard smiled. "Where is the Hayes representative?" The executive looked toward the doors. "He'll be here shortly." Richard adjusted his jacket. He had no idea that the man about to walk through those doors was the same mechanic he had ordered to stay away from his daughter. And this time, Daniel wouldn't be wearing grease-stained clothes. He wouldn't be standing beneath a car. He wouldn't be asking anyone for permission. Because when those doors opened, the entire Sterling family was about to discover exactly who Daniel Hayes really was. Richard Sterling sat confidently at the head of the boardroom table. The room was filled with executives, lawyers, investors, and senior business partners. This was supposed to be the biggest deal of his career. A partnership with Hayes Global Holdings could take Sterling Industries into markets Richard had spent decades trying to reach. He adjusted his cufflinks. "Let's get this over with." The senior executive, standing near the door, smiled politely. "We're just waiting for Mr. Hayes." Richard glanced at his watch. "I'm sure he'll be here." The room suddenly became quiet. Then the double doors opened. Richard looked up and froze. Daniel walked into the room, not in grease-stained work clothes, not carrying a toolbox. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit. His dark hair was neatly styled. Two executives followed behind him. Another group stood as he entered. Richard's face went pale. "No." Daniel stopped at the head of the table. "Good morning." Nobody spoke. Richard slowly stood. "What are you doing here?" Daniel looked at him calmly. "I believe this is my meeting." Richard stared at him, then at the executives, then back at Daniel. "Your meeting." The senior executive stepped forward. "Mr. Sterling, allow me to introduce Daniel Hayes, chairman and controlling shareholder of Hayes Global Holdings." Silence. Richard's mouth opened slightly. He couldn't speak. The man he'd called a mechanic, the man he'd ordered to stay away from his daughter, the man he'd tried to intimidate, wasn't just wealthy. He controlled an empire worth several times more than Richard's. Richard slowly sat down. Daniel took his seat. And for the first time, Richard understood something terrifying. Daniel had never been beneath him. Not even once. Across town, Amelia sat alone in her apartment. She had spent the entire morning staring at her phone. No messages from Daniel. No calls. Nothing. She told herself she didn't care. But every few minutes, she checked her phone again. Then the television caught her attention. A breaking business report appeared on the screen. Hayes Global Holdings announces new chairman. Amelia's heart stopped. She turned up the volume. The reporter continued. Daniel Hayes, previously known for maintaining an extremely private lifestyle, has officially assumed control of the Hayes family empire. A photograph appeared. Daniel, in a suit, standing in front of the Hayes Global Holdings headquarters. Amelia stared at the screen. Her lips parted. Oh my God. The man she had fallen in love with was everywhere. Financial magazines, business networks, international headlines. And suddenly, the pieces began falling into place. The phone calls, the black cars, the mysterious family, the executive at the garage, the expensive building, the secrets, everything. Daniel hadn't been pretending to be someone else. He had been hiding who he really was. At Sterling headquarters, Richard remained frozen in his chair. Finally, he spoke. "You knew." Daniel looked at him. "Knew what?" "You knew exactly who I was when you came to my daughter's life." Daniel's expression remained calm. "I knew who you were. And you never told me. You never asked." Richard's face reddened. "You let me insult you." Daniel leaned back. "You did that yourself." Several executives looked down, trying not to react. Richard clenched his jaw. "You deliberately made me think you were poor." Daniel shook his head. "No." "Then what was the mechanic?" "My life." Richard stared at him. Daniel continued. "I've spent most of my life surrounded by people who wanted something from me." He looked around the room. Investors wanted deals. Friends wanted connections. People wanted invitations, introductions, and access. His voice became quieter. So I walked away. Richard scoffed. You expect me to believe a billionaire wanted to be a mechanic? Daniel smiled faintly. I didn't become a mechanic because I had to. He paused. I became one because I wanted to. The room went silent. A few hours later, Amelia arrived at the Hayes headquarters. The receptionist recognized her immediately. Miss Sterling. Amelia nodded. Is Daniel here? Yes. She was directed toward his private office. She stood outside the door for several seconds before knocking. Come in. She opened the door. Daniel was standing beside the window. He turned. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. Finally, Amelia said, So it's all true. Daniel nodded. Yes. She walked farther into the room. You own all of this. Daniel looked around. Technically, the shareholders own parts of it. She gave him a look. Daniel. He smiled slightly. Yes. She looked at him, then at the city outside the window. Why? He knew exactly what she meant. Why did you hide it? Daniel took a slow breath. My father raised me to believe that our name was everything. He looked down. When I was younger, people treated me differently the moment they found out who my family was. He paused. Some people became nicer, some became jealous, some wanted things. And you thought I would do the same. No. Amelia looked hurt. Then why? Daniel stepped closer. Because I was afraid. Of me. Of losing what we had. Her expression softened. Daniel continued. When I met you, you didn't know who I was. He smiled sadly. You argued with me. You made fun of my clothes. You brought me terrible coffee. Amelia almost smiled. Your coffee was worse. It was terrible. A tiny laugh escaped her. Then the smile disappeared. Daniel looked at her. You were the first person in years who made me feel like Daniel. Not Daniel Hayes. Just Daniel. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. You should have trusted me enough to tell me. I know. And I hated finding out from someone else. I know. She looked down. I thought you were testing me. I was. You were. Daniel shook his head. I was testing myself. Amelia looked up. What does that mean? I was trying to believe that I could have something real. He stepped closer. And then I realized I was willing to lose everything just to keep you. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. Daniel. He stopped a few feet away. I don't expect you to forgive me today. She looked at him. But I want you to know one thing. What? You were never a test. Daniel's voice broke slightly. You were the first thing in my life that felt real. Silence. Amelia wiped away a tear. Then she walked toward him. You're still an idiot. Daniel smiled. I know. You should have told me. I know. I was so angry. I know. She stopped in front of him. And I'm still angry. Daniel nodded. Fair. She smiled through her tears. But Daniel waited. I don't want to lose you either. His expression changed. For the first time, the billionaire who had faced boardrooms, investors, and powerful businessmen without fear looked completely vulnerable. Are you sure? Amelia nodded. Yes. But the biggest surprise wasn't over. That evening, Richard arrived at Daniel's office. He stood awkwardly at the door. Daniel looked up. Mr. Sterling. Richard sighed. Don't call me that. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Richard walked inside. "I owe you an apology." Daniel said nothing. "I judged you." "Yes." Richard winced. "You don't have to agree so quickly." Daniel almost smiled. Richard sat down. "I spent my entire life believing money gave me the right to decide what was best for my daughter." He looked at Daniel. "I was wrong." Daniel studied him. Richard continued, "You could have destroyed my company after the way I treated you." "I considered it." Richard's eyes widened. Daniel smiled. "I'm joking." Richard let out a nervous laugh. It was the first time the two men had ever shared one. Then Richard became serious. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" Daniel answered honestly. "Because I didn't need your approval." Richard nodded slowly. "I understand that now." Months later, Amelia stood outside Daniel's garage. The same little garage where everything had started. Daniel walked out carrying a toolbox. She smiled. "You're still doing this?" "Of course. You own an international empire. And you have hundreds of employees. Thousands." She rolled her eyes. "And you're still fixing cars." Daniel smiled. "Somebody has to." Amelia laughed. Then she noticed something. A brand new sign had been placed above the garage. HAYS Community Auto Center. She looked at him. "What is this?" Daniel shrugged. "I bought the building." "You bought the garage?" "Yes." "Why?" Daniel looked around. "Because this is where I met you." Amelia smiled. "You're sentimental. Don't tell anyone." She stepped closer. "You know what I used to think?" "What?" "I thought I had fallen for a mechanic who had nothing." Daniel smiled. "And now?" She looked into his eyes. "Now I know I fell for a billionaire who didn't need anyone to know he was a billionaire." Daniel laughed. "That's a terrible title." "It's accurate." He shook his head. Then Amelia took his hand. "You know what I love most about you?" "What?" "You never needed to prove you were rich." Daniel looked at her. "And you never needed my money." She smiled. "No." She squeezed his hand. "I just needed you to be honest." Daniel nodded. "I will be." As they walked toward the garage, Amelia stopped. "Wait." Daniel turned. She smiled. "Your father called me yesterday." Daniel's expression immediately changed. "What did he want?" Amelia laughed. "He wants us to have dinner." Daniel groaned. "Absolutely not." She laughed harder. "You're scared of my father." "No." Daniel looked toward the sky. "I'm scared of what he'll say after dessert." Amelia slipped her arm through his. Too late. They continued walking. And behind them stood the little garage where a billionaire had once hidden from the world. A place where nobody cared about his fortune. A place where Amelia had first met him as simply Daniel. Because sometimes the greatest love story doesn't begin when two people discover how much they have. It begins when they believe they have nothing. And for Daniel Hayes, the richest man Amelia had ever met, the greatest fortune he ever found was the one thing money could never buy. Someone who stayed after discovering the truth. If Daniel and Amelia's story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Velvet Twist Stories for more emotional twists, hidden identities, billionaire romances, and stories that remind us that love isn't always about what someone owns. And before you go, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know where our Velvet Twist Stories family is joining us from. Until the next story.